Before he vanished in the trunk of his own car, Roy DeMeo built a murder machine the Mafia couldn't control. He was just a kid from Canarsie, quiet, focused, and dangerously ambitious. Born in 1942 to working-class Italian parents in Brooklyn, Roy grew up surrounded by men who measured respect in silence, not words. He didn't crave attention, he craved control. By the time he graduated from James Madison High School in 1959, Roy was already dipping into the underworld. While his peers were chasing college or trade work, Roy had begun making money through informal loans, an early start to his career in loan sharking. He also worked at a local grocery store during his teens, where he trained as an apprentice butcher. It was honest work, but the skills he learned would later take on a gruesome second life. His precision with blades and understanding of anatomy would become infamous within the Gemini Method years later. Then came car theft, fast cash, low risk. Roy began fencing stolen vehicles and working with neighborhood crews, but he didn't act like a typical street guy. He tracked payments, managed risk. He was a criminal with a ledger, and that made him dangerous. That reputation reached Nino Gaggi, a rising soldier in the Gambino crime family. Gaggi needed someone discreet and deadly. Roy fit the mold perfectly. He wasn't yet made, but he didn't need a ceremony. Gaggi gave him the green light, and Roy began assembling a crew that would soon become infamous. Roy's calculated rise was not typical of street-level gangsters. He avoided flashy moves and kept his head down, preferring smart partnerships over brute force. In a world where impulse often led to disaster, Roy planned every move. He didn't see violence as personal. He saw it as a cost of doing business. He didn't kill for status. He did it to maintain control. By the time most men his age were still finding their way, Roy had already created a power base that stretched from Canarsie garages to Mafia backrooms. And he was just getting started. In the underworld, killing is business. But Roy DeMeo turned it into an assembly line. He set up operations at the Gemini Lounge, a neighborhood bar in Flatlands, Brooklyn. Out front, it looked like any local dive. Dim lights, pool tables, cheap drinks. But through a side door, up a narrow staircase, was a hidden apartment converted into a kill room. This was the start of the Gemini Method, a cold, calculated system for making people disappear. The steps were always the same: a silenced pistol to the head, a knife immediately to the heart to stop the blood flow. Then came dismemberment, systematic, practiced. The body was chopped into pieces, stuffed into garbage bags, and quietly disposed of around the city. Roy didn't just know how to kill, he knew how to carve. Years earlier, he'd been a teenage butcher, and now those skills were repurposed with surgical cruelty. Some parts went to landfills, others into sewers. Victims vanished without a trace. No body, no crime. Crew members included Chris Rosenberg, Anthony Center, and Joseph "Joey" Testa. Center and Testa, known as the Gemini twins for always being together, formed a deadly duo within the crew. What started as a method to handle problems evolved into something far darker. They didn't just kill enemies, they killed associates, friends, even family when ordered. Some murders were for business, others were just to send a message. Sometimes, there was no reason at all. The Gemini Method was effective, horrifying, and efficient. The FBI would eventually tie the crew to over 100 murders. Some believe the real number is over 200. Sometimes the victims were strangers. Other times they were close associates. Men who had dinner with Roy, laughed with him, trusted him. That's what made the Gemini Method so terrifying. No one was safe. The apartment became so synonymous with death that some crew members believed it was cursed. Still, they kept killing. There were quotas to meet, favors to repay, and loose ends to eliminate. It wasn't just about removing threats. It was about maintaining power through fear, not just among rivals, but within Roy's own ranks. Anyone who hesitated to obey knew where they might end up. Murder kept Roy feared, but money kept him protected. DeMeo ran one of the most profitable criminal networks on the East Coast. At its core was car theft. Hundreds of vehicles stolen monthly, stripped for parts or shipped overseas under fake paperwork. It was a multi-million-dollar operation, run like a corporation. And that was just the beginning. He oversaw credit card fraud, drug trafficking, porn distribution, and even operated within the gay bar scene, which was at the time largely controlled by mob interests. Roy didn't just take, he built. He kept detailed ledgers, organized routes, streamlined collections. He didn't see himself as a thug. He saw himself as a CEO of crime. His success caught the attention of other crews. But Roy kept expanding, striking a key alliance with the Westies, an Irish gang in Hell's Kitchen. They were violent, unpredictable, and perfect partners for muscle and enforcement. The deal brought in more cash and gave the Gambinos even greater reach. Roy was seen as a fixer, a moneymaker, an unnecessary evil. But not everyone was impressed. Paul Castellano, boss of the Gambinos, grew wary of Roy's high body count and increasing visibility. He worried that Roy was bringing too much heat, that he was turning the family's shadow operations into a spotlight of blood. Still, no one dared move against him, not yet. What truly set Roy apart was his ability to integrate brutality with strategy. He was just as comfortable balancing books as he was ordering hits. He turned his crew into a multi-service operation: theft, fraud, extortion, enforcement, a criminal Swiss Army knife. Money flowed in from every angle. Strip clubs paid tribute. Business owners paid for protection. Roy even had judges and local officials on his payroll, ensuring things ran smoothly. He wasn't just a feared gangster, he was a logistics master. His operations crossed boroughs, international borders, and intersected with nearly every major criminal pipeline on the East Coast. The higher Roy climbed, the more paranoid he became. And when paranoia meets power, things fall apart fast. By the early 80s, Roy had become obsessed with surveillance. He wired his house, bugged his phones, installed cameras in the lounge, carried multiple pistols, slept in short bursts, watched his crew like prey. He trusted no one, not even his closest crew. The FBI was indeed closing in. They'd flipped associates, planted bugs, and connected Roy to an ever-growing list of missing persons. Roy knew they were watching, and his behavior turned erratic. Inside the crew, fear began to build. Roy had already killed Chris Rosenberg, his right-hand man, under pressure from Castellano. It was the first major fracture in the group's loyalty. Now everyone wondered, who's next? Roy talked about running. He mentioned going underground. Some say he was planning to disappear entirely, but by then it was too late. Gaggi was stepping back. Castellano had lost patience, and the FBI, they were closing in with indictments and federal cases. Roy DeMeo had built a death machine, but now even he couldn't escape the gears. Meetings grew shorter, his circle tightened. Associates who once shared drinks and stories were now treated like suspects. He interrogated crew members for signs of betrayal, changed routines daily, refused to travel alone. He even avoided public places, fearing drive-bys or surprise raids. The machine he built to eliminate threats now made him feel surrounded by them. Friends became liabilities. Silence became isolating. The empire he built with precision now felt like a trap. One wrong move, and everything would collapse. On January 10, 1983, Roy DeMeo went missing. Days later, his Cadillac was discovered near the Brooklyn Belt Parkway. In the trunk, his frozen body. Wrapped in a sheet, multiple gunshot wounds. A bullet still clutched in his hand. A final, silent symbol of betrayal. No arrests were made, no trial was held. But those inside the life knew what had happened. Testa and Center were believed to be involved in Roy DeMeo's murder, possibly to save their own lives in a purge of the DeMeo crew. After Roy's death, they aligned with the Lucchese crime family and continued killing for someone else. Whether it was Castellano's order or a desperate act by his own crew, Roy DeMeo had become the final victim of the machine he built. In the months that followed, the FBI swept in. Raids, arrests, multiple life sentences handed down. Anthony Center and Joe Testa were convicted. Others flipped, exposing the full scale of DeMeo's operations. The Gemini Lounge was shuttered. The apartment was gutted, but its history remains written in whispers and blood. Roy DeMeo wasn't just another gangster. He was a blueprint for how far organized crime could go. When violence becomes routine and fear becomes law. He killed to protect. He killed to silence. He killed because it worked. But in the end, the murder machine destroyed its own creator. News of Roy's death sent shockwaves through the underworld. If someone like DeMeo could be taken out, anyone could. It marked a turning point, not just for the Gambino family, but for the entire structure of how the Mafia handled internal discipline. The murder machine was shut down, but its blueprint remained. Years later, law enforcement would uncover Roy's notebooks, coded entries tracking loans, killings, and crew activity. It read like a ledger of death. Roy DeMeo didn't leave a legacy of honor or tradition. He left behind a model for transactional violence, one that would echo through organized crime long after his trunk went cold.